The low hum of conversation blended with the clink of silverware against china as I balanced 3 plates along my forearm. Despite the restaurant's aggressive air conditioning, sweat beaded at my temples. Friday nights at Bianca were always chaos. Beautiful, profitable chaos that meant my rent would be paid next month. Table 7 needs more bread, Marco hissed as he passed, his server's jacket immaculate compared to mine, which had already collected a constellation of sauce splatters. I nodded, scanning the dining room with tired eyes. With each step, my feet screamed in protest, 8 hours into a double shift. But I needed this job. I needed the tips. Since Mom's medical bills started piling up, I'd been picking up every available shift, leaving only enough time to crash on my lumpy mattress before starting all over again. The restaurant's amber lighting cast everyone in a warm, forgiving glow, transforming Bianchi's from an overpriced Italian place into something almost magical. Crystal glasses sparkled. Patrons in designer clothes laughed at jokes that probably weren't that funny. The scent of garlic, basil, and reduction sauces hung in the air, masking the faint smell of my drugstore perfume that had faded hours ago. I was invisible here, just another set of hands delivering $40 pasta dishes until I wasn't. The shift in the restaurant's atmosphere was subtle at first, a quieting of conversation near the entrance. The maître d's posture straightened to attention, then the whispers spread like ripples in still water. That's him. Don't stare. I heard he owns half the waterfront now. I was refilling water glasses at table 9 when the party arrived. 3 men in suits that cost more than my car. 2 flanking a third, taller, broader, like satellites orbiting a dark star. They moved with practiced synchronicity. The 2 outer men scanned the room with cold efficiency while the center figure seemed to glide rather than walk. Sophia. Marco grabbed my elbow, his fingers digging in with urgency. Mr. Castellano's table is yours. His eyes held a warning. Don't screw this up. My stomach dropped. Everyone knew about the Castellanos, even if nobody talked about them directly. Their import business was the worst-kept secret in the city. They didn't own Bianchi's, not officially. But they might as well have for how the staff scrambled whenever Dante Castellano decided to dine with us. But I started to protest. He requested you. Marco cut me off, his voice dropping to a whisper. Specifically, you by name. The room seemed to tilt slightly. How would he know my name? I'd never served his table before. I'd made sure of it, always swapping sections with other servers when he came in. Something about the way people fell silent in his presence made my skin crawl. Fine, I muttered, smoothing down my apron with damp palms. What does he usually order? Marco shook his head. Just be professional. Don't make eye contact for too long and for God's sake, don't spill anything. By the time I approached their table, my heart was hammering against my ribs. The 2 bodyguards sat facing outward, eyes constantly moving across the restaurant. But Dante Castellano was looking directly at me, waiting. The air around him seemed charged, like the heaviness before a thunderstorm. He wasn't what I expected. In my imagination, mob bosses were either wrinkled old men or grotesque caricatures of masculinity. Dante Castellano was neither, maybe 40, with olive skin, and dark hair just beginning to silver at the temples. His features were sharp, but not harsh. High cheekbones, a straight nose, a jaw strong enough to cast shadows. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit him like it had been poured onto his frame. A silver tie clip caught the light when he moved, but it was his eyes that made my steps falter. Dark as espresso, they caught me, held me, seemed to peel away layers I didn't know I had. Good evening, gentlemen, I managed to say, proud when my voice didn't shake. Welcome to Bianchi's. May I start you with something from the bar? One bodyguard ordered scotch, the other water. Dante Castellano hadn't stopped watching me, hadn't even blinked. Sophia Russo, he said, my name in his mouth sounding like something precious and breakable. Not a question, a statement. I froze. Yes, sir. Interesting. He tilted his head slightly. You've been avoiding me for months now. Heat rushed to my face. I don't know what you switch sections with Marco. Or Gabriella. Sometimes Anthony. His voice was quiet but carried authority in each syllable. Every time I come in, the other men at the table kept their eyes averted as if this conversation wasn't happening. As if their boss knowing a waitress's schedule wasn't deeply unsettling. I'm sorry if that seemed unprofessional, I managed, clutching my notepad so tightly my knuckles whitened. One corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. I didn't say I was offended. He leaned back, his posture relaxed, but still commanding every inch of space around him. I'll have the Macallan. Neat. I nodded, scribbling the order before retreating to the bar on shaking legs. Behind me, I could feel his gaze like a physical weight between my shoulder blades. You okay? Asked Dario, our bartender, as he prepared the drinks. You look like you've seen a ghost. He knows my name, I whispered. He knows when I switch sections. Dario's hands paused for a fraction of a second before resuming their practiced movements. Castellano notices everything. It's how he's stayed alive this long. But why me? I'm nobody. Dario slid the drinks onto my tray, avoiding my eyes. Nobody is nobody to men like him. Sophia, be careful. I returned to the table, setting each drink down with exaggerated care. When I placed Dante's scotch before him, his fingers brushed against mine. Deliberately, I was certain. The brief contact sent an electric current up my arm. The chef has prepared a special menu this evening, I recited, the words feeling mechanical. Would you like to hear the selections? The men nodded, but their eyes weren't on me. Something had changed in the restaurant's atmosphere. The bodyguards had subtly shifted, their attention focused on the entrance. I glanced over my shoulder to see a group of 4 men being seated across the restaurant. They looked ordinary enough, business suits, moderate watches, but the temperature in the room had dropped 10 degrees. When I turned back, Dante Castellano was watching the newcomers with an expression I couldn't read. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. The selections can wait, he said softly. Tell me, Sophia, how long have you worked here? 3 years, sir. And you know the regulars well, I imagine. I nodded, unsure where this was going. Most of them. He gestured with his chin toward the new table. Those men. Do they come in often? My throat went dry. Whatever game was being played here, I wanted no part in it. I don't recognize them, sir. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once as if confirming something to himself. He lifted his glass, swirling the amber liquid before bringing it to his lips. That's when I saw it. A slight discoloration in the scotch, almost imperceptible, but the lighting caught it just right. A faint cloudy swirl that shouldn't be there in a neat pour. My hand shot out before I could think, my fingers wrapping around his wrist. Don't drink that. The restaurant seemed to freeze. His bodyguards tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Dante himself went perfectly still, his eyes locking onto mine with predatory intensity. Excuse me. His voice was dangerously soft. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I was suddenly painfully aware of my hand on his wrist, the warm skin, the steady pulse beneath my fingertips. Slowly, I withdrew my touch. I'm sorry, but I swallowed hard, lowering my voice to a whisper. There's something wrong with your drink. His expression didn't change, but something sharpened in his gaze. Explain. It's cloudy. Just slightly, but I hesitated, my eyes darting to the men at the other table, then back to him. My father was a bartender for 30 years. He taught me what a drink should look like. That's not right. A heavy silence settled over the table. One of the bodyguards reached for the glass, but Dante stopped him with a subtle gesture. Instead, he lifted the tumbler himself, examining it against the light without drinking. Get the manager, he told one of his men, who immediately rose and disappeared toward the kitchen. To me, he said, stay here. Don't move. What happened next was a blur. The manager appeared, white-faced and stammering. Dante spoke to him in low, measured tones. The scotch was taken away. The men at the other table suddenly found reason to leave, their food untouched. 2 unfamiliar men in dark suits materialized at the restaurant's entrance, watching them go. Through it all, I stood rooted to the spot, terror and confusion warring inside me. I'd inserted myself into something dangerous, something I should have ignored. People who crossed the Castanos didn't fare well. Everyone knew that. When things finally quieted, Dante Castellano turned his attention back to me. The restaurant had largely emptied, though I couldn't recall hearing an announcement. "Sit down, Sophia," he said, gesturing to the chair beside him. Not across the table. Beside him. "I should get back to my other tables," I whispered, though I knew I had none left. "Sit." I sat, perched on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to flee. His cologne enveloped me, something expensive and subtle. Notes of cedar and bergamot. "Do you understand what you did tonight?" he asked, his voice almost gentle. I shook my head, my eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "Look at me." Reluctantly, I raised my gaze to meet his. Those dark eyes seemed to contain multitudes, intelligence, danger, and something else I couldn't name. "You saved my life," he said simply. My lips parted in surprise. It might have just been a bad batch. Or, no, he cut me off. It wasn't. The implication settled over me like a shroud. Someone had tried to poison Dante Castellano. And I had stopped it. "Why would you do that?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. "You've been avoiding me for months. You know who I am. What I do. Why not just let it happen?" I thought about lying, about saying something noble or brave. But the truth tumbled out instead. "Because it wasn't right," I said softly. "Whatever else you might be, whatever you might have done, no one deserves to be poisoned while they're just trying to have dinner." Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes perhaps, or a slight release of tension in his jaw. He studied me as if I were a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. "You have no idea what you've done, do you?" he murmured, more to himself than to me. "The scales that have tipped tonight." Before I could respond, the manager reappeared, leaning down to whisper something in Dante's ear. His expression hardened again, all traces of softness vanishing. "We need to leave," he said, rising from his chair. "And you're coming with us." Fear clutched at my throat. "What?" "No, I can't. I have to finish my shift." "Your shift is over." His tone left no room for argument. "You're not safe here anymore." One of the bodyguards placed a thick envelope on the table, enough cash to cover their unordered meals many times over, while the other moved to stand behind my chair. "Mr. Castellano, please," I began, panic rising in my chest. "I don't want any part of this. I just saw something wrong with a drink." He leaned down, bringing his face close to mine. I caught a whiff of his cologne again, mixed with the faint scent of expensive fabric and something uniquely him. "You made yourself part of this the moment you stopped me from drinking," he said quietly. "And now there are men who know your face, your name, and the fact that you interfered with their plans." His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. "They'll be coming for you, Sophia Russo. The only question is whether you'll be under my protection when they do." The restaurant's exit loomed before me, dark and forbidding. Beyond it waited Dante Castellano's world, a place of danger and power I'd spent years avoiding. But behind me lurked unseen enemies, faceless men who'd marked me as a target. With trembling legs, I stood. Sometimes the only choice is which danger to face. I took a step toward the door, and Dante Castellano's hand came to rest at the small of my back. Proprietary, protective, dangerous. I had saved his life. Now he owned mine. The night air hit my face like a slap, cool and damp with the promise of rain. Dante's hand remained at my back, guiding me toward a sleek black Escalade idling at the curb. One bodyguard walked ahead, the other behind, creating a human corridor that left me no escape route. "I need to get my purse," I said, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. "My coat is still inside." "They'll be brought to you," Dante replied, not slowing his stride. A third man I hadn't seen before opened the SUV's door. The interior was dimly lit, all black leather and tinted windows. Dante gestured for me to enter first. I hesitated, reality crashing down around me. I was about to get into a car with the city's most notorious crime lord. Every crime show I'd ever watched, every warning my mother had ever given me about strange men screamed in my head. "I can't just disappear," I protested, digging in my heels. My mother will worry. I have a roommate. People will look for me. Something that might have been respect flickered across Dante's face. You're not disappearing, Sophia. You're coming to my home where I can ensure your safety while my men clean up this situation. And then what? I just go back to my life like nothing happened. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Let's discuss the future when we're not standing exposed on a public street. A distant flash of headlights caught my attention. A car turning onto our street too fast. Engine revving. One of Dante's men noticed too, his posture stiffening. Inside. Now. Dante's tone left no room for argument as he practically lifted me into the vehicle, sliding in after me. The door had barely closed when I heard it, the sharp crack of gunfire. The driver accelerated immediately, tires squealing against asphalt. I gasped, instinctively ducking down. Stay low, Dante instructed calmly, one hand pressing me further into the seat while the other reached inside his jacket. He produced a matte black handgun with practiced ease, holding it ready but not aiming. The SUV swerved hard, throwing me against Dante's solid frame. More gunshots echoed behind us, but they sounded farther away now. Through the rear window, I glimpsed another black vehicle cutting off our pursuers. Backup team has engaged, reported the driver, his voice mechanical and professional. We're clear to proceed to the primary location. Dante nodded once, not putting away his weapon, but relaxing his grip slightly. His other arm had somehow wound around my shoulders, holding me securely against him. I could feel his heartbeat through his suit jacket, steady and strong, not racing like mine. Are you hit? He asked, his voice low near my ear. No, I managed, though I wasn't entirely sure. Everything had happened so fast. He pulled back slightly, dark eyes scanning my face and body for injuries. Finding none, he relaxed marginally, though his arm remained around me. Breathe, Sophia, he instructed. Slow and deep. You're safe now. Safe was relative when bullets had just flown past the car, but I tried to obey, drawing a shuddering breath into lungs that felt too tight. The adrenaline made everything hyperreal. The buttery softness of the leather seats. The faint scent of Dante's cologne. The coldness of the air conditioning against my flushed skin. Those men, I whispered. They were trying to kill you. And now they're trying to kill me, too. Yes. No sugarcoating, no reassurances that I was imagining things. Just a simple acknowledgement of the danger. Because I stopped you from drinking that scotch. His eyes held mine. Because you showed loyalty to someone you had no reason to protect. It wasn't loyalty, I protested. It was just human decency. A rare commodity in my world. Something like sadness crossed his features before disappearing behind his composed mask. One I won't forget. The city lights streamed past the windows as we traveled deeper into the wealthy northern district. Rain began to fall, fat droplets streaking across the glass and refracting the neon signs and street lights into kaleidoscopic patterns. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware I was still in my waitress uniform, black slacks and a white button-down with sauce stains on the sleeve. My hair had partially escaped its practical ponytail, and I hadn't had a chance to reapply makeup since my shift began 14 hours ago. Next to Dante's immaculate appearance, I felt shabby and small. As if reading my mind, he removed his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body and smelled of him, that subtle cologne and something uniquely masculine. Thank you, I murmured automatically, drawing it closer around me. You're in shock, he said, not unkindly. It will pass. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The events of the evening swirled in my mind like the cloudy scotch I'd spotted in his glass. What if I hadn't noticed? What if I'd let him drink it? Would I still be at Bianchi's, blissfully unaware as a man died at table 11? The SUV slowed, turning through an ornate wrought-iron gate that opened automatically at our approach. We drove up a long, winding driveway flanked by perfectly manicured trees illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. At the end stood a mansion that looked like it belonged on a Mediterranean cliff rather than the outskirts of our industrial city, all clean lines and warm stone with soaring windows that glowed golden from within. Welcome to my home, Dante said as the vehicle came to a stop under a covered portico. I'd seen mansions in magazines and movies, but nothing prepared me for the reality of Dante Castellano's residence. The front door was opened by a grey-haired man in a simple black suit before we even exited the car. Federico, Dante acknowledged him with a nod. We have a situation and a guest. The man, presumably some kind of butler or house manager, didn't so much as blink at the gun still visible in Dante's hand or the unexpected visitor wrapped in his jacket. I'll prepare the blue suite, he replied smoothly, and inform security of the updated protocols. Dante helped me from the car, his hand returning to the small of my back as he guided me inside. The entrance hall was a soaring two-story space with a curved staircase and marble floors. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over artwork that looked museum-worthy. Everything spoke of old money, of wealth accumulated over generations rather than the gaudy flash of new riches. "Are you hungry?" Dante asked, watching me take in my surroundings. I shook my head, though I realized I hadn't eaten since a hastily consumed sandwich during my break hours ago. Food was the furthest thing from my mind. "A drink then," he decided, steering me toward what appeared to be a study or library off the main hall. The room was masculine, but not aggressively so. Dark woods and leather furniture softened by textured rugs and warm lighting. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes. A fireplace occupied another, its mantel adorned with a single oil painting of a coastal Italian town. Dante guided me to a leather couch, then moved to a sideboard where crystal decanters gleamed. I noticed he checked each one carefully before pouring, sniffing the contents with subtle caution. "Old habits," he said, catching my observation. "In my position, paranoia is just good sense." He brought me a tumbler with a splash of amber liquid. "Brandy. It will help with the shock." I accepted it with trembling fingers. "Do you always bring home waitresses who prevent your assassination?" The question surprised a genuine laugh from him. A warm, rich sound I wouldn't have expected from someone so controlled. "You'd be the first." He settled into an armchair opposite me, loosening his tie slightly, but otherwise appearing as composed as he had at the restaurant. Only the gun now resting on the side table hinted at the violence we'd narrowly escaped. "You have questions," he stated, sipping his own drink. I took a small swallow of the brandy, warmth blooming in my chest as it went down. "About 1,000,000. Start with 1. I considered carefully. There were practical questions. How long would I stay here? What would happen to my job, my apartment, my mother? But something more fundamental nagged at me. "How did they know?" I asked. "The men who tried to poison you. How did they know you'd be at Bianchi's tonight?" Approval flashed in his eyes. "A good question. Someone talked. Someone close. A traitor." He nodded once. "My organization is undergoing changes. Not everyone is pleased with the direction I'm taking our business interests." I knew what that meant, even if he couched it in euphemisms. The Castellano crime family was evolving, perhaps becoming more legitimate, and the old guard wasn't happy. "And stopping the poisoning means I've chosen a side," I said slowly, understanding dawning. Even though I didn't know there were sides. "Precisely." A knock at the door interrupted us. Federico entered, carrying my purse and coat from the restaurant along with a small overnight bag I didn't recognize. "I've taken the liberty of procuring some essentials for Miss Russo," he said, setting the items on a chair. "Josephine has prepared the blue suite and can assist with anything else required." "Thank you, Federico." Dante's tone was polite but dismissive. When we were alone again, I clutched my purse to my chest like a shield. "How do you know my last name?" A slight smile touched his lips. "I know many things about you, Sophia Russo. 26 years old, graduated with honors from the State University with a degree in literature, but never pursued a career in publishing. Supporting a mother with multiple sclerosis. Living in a small apartment with a roommate named Ellie Chen, taking double shifts at Bianchi's to make ends meet." I slid down my spine. "You've been investigating me?" "I make it my business to know everyone who works in establishments I frequent," he replied smoothly. "Especially those who go out of their way to avoid me." The brandy suddenly felt sour in my stomach. That's disturbing. It's survival. He set down his glass, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The position should have made him seem less intimidating, bringing him to my level. But somehow it only emphasized the controlled power in his frame. Your avoidance intrigued me. Most people in service positions attempt to curry favor with me, not hide from me. I just wanted to stay uninvolved, I whispered. Keep my head down and take care of my mom. Something softened in his expression. And yet here you are. Involved in the most dramatic way possible. A wave of exhaustion crashed over me, the adrenaline finally draining away to leave me hollow and shaking. What happens now? Now, he said, rising to his feet. You rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss arrangements for your safety. And your mother's. My head snapped up. My mother? Is she in danger too? Anyone connected to you could be used as leverage. He stated it as simple fact. My men are already watching her apartment. She'll need to be moved to a secure location until this is resolved. Panic fluttered in my chest. She needs her medical equipment, her medications. She can't just be moved like furniture. All her needs will be accommodated. His tone allowed no argument. Your mother's safety isn't negotiable, Sophia. I pressed my fingers to my temples, feeling a headache building. And how long will this situation last? Until I find the traitor in my organization and eliminate the threat. Again, the matter-of-fact way he referenced murder made me flinch. Dante moved to stand before me, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, allowing him to pull me to my feet. Standing this close, the height difference between us was more apparent. The top of my head barely reached his shoulder. I know this is overwhelming, he said, his voice gentler than before. But I protect what's mine, Sophia. And tonight, you made yourself mine. A shiver that wasn't entirely fear traced its way down my spine. I'm not yours. You saved my life. His fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, the touch featherlight but sending electricity through me. In my world, that creates a debt that can never truly be repaid. But I will try. Before I could respond, the door opened again, revealing a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Miss Russo, I'm Josephine. I'll show you to your room now. I stepped back from Dante, suddenly aware of how close we'd been standing. His hand fell away from my face, but his eyes held mine for a moment longer. Rest, he said softly. We'll talk in the morning. Josephine led me up the curved staircase and down a hallway lined with more expensive artwork. The blue suite turned out to be a bedroom larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of slate blue and silver. A four-poster bed dominated one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. A door to one side revealed an in-suite bathroom with a shower and soaking tub that could fit 3 people. There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit, Josephine explained, opening double doors to reveal a walk-in closet already stocked with women's clothing in approximately my size. If you need anything during the night, press this button. She indicated an intercom near the bed. I nodded numbly, too overwhelmed to form words. The house is fully secured, she added, perhaps reading the fear in my face. No one enters or leaves without Mr. Castellano's knowledge. She paused at the door. You're safe here, Miss Russo. Safer than anywhere else in the city tonight. When she left, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my fingers still clutching my purse. Inside was my phone, my connection to my normal life. I pulled it out with trembling hands, seeing notifications for 3 missed calls from my roommate Ellie. I should call her. Explain what? That I'd been kidnapped by a crime lord for my own protection after stopping an assassination attempt. That men with guns had shot at us as we fled the restaurant. Instead, I texted, got invited to a private party after work. Staying overnight. We'll explain tomorrow. Don't worry. It was vague enough to buy me time, but specific enough to prevent her from filing a missing persons report. I added a quick tell mom I'll call her in the morning before setting the phone aside. In the enormous bathroom, I stared at my reflection in a mirror framed in what looked like actual silver. My face was pale, dark circles prominent beneath my eyes. My hair had completely escaped its ponytail, hanging in limp waves around my shoulders. I looked exactly like what I was, an exhausted waitress caught in a situation far beyond her control. I showered in water hot enough to turn my skin pink, using unfamiliar products that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. Afterward, I found silk pajamas in the closet that fit suspiciously well, along with a plush robe that felt like being wrapped in a cloud. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard gunshots and screeching tires. Sunshine streamed through massive windows, illuminating details I'd missed in the darkness. The intricate inlay of the marble floors, the subtle texture of hand-painted wallpaper, fresh flowers arranged in crystal vases. I paused outside the study door, gathering courage, then knocked softly. "Come in." Dante sat behind a massive desk, suit jacket draped over his chair, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms as he worked on a laptop. The morning light caught the silver at his temples, giving him an oddly distinguished air despite the gun I could see within easy reach. He closed the computer as I entered, giving me his full attention. "Did you sleep?" he asked, gesturing for me to take a seat opposite him. "Not really," I admitted. "It's hard to rest when men with guns are hunting you." Something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. "A fair point." I perched on the edge of the leather chair, trying not to fidget under his steady gaze. "Have you found them? The men who tried to poison you?" "We're making progress." He steepled his fingers, studying me with those dark, penetrating eyes. "But that's not your concern." "Not my concern?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "They shot at me too, remember?" A slight smile touched his lips. "You have spirit, Sophia. I respect that." The smile faded. "But the less you know about certain aspects of my business, the safer you'll be." I crossed my arms. "What about my mother?" "You said she needs to be moved." "It's being arranged. I've secured a fully accessible apartment in a building I own. Medical equipment is being delivered today along with a private nurse who can assist with her care." My mouth fell open. I can't afford, you're not paying for anything." His tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. "Consider it partial repayment for what you did." "And what about my job? My apartment? My life? I can't just disappear into your world." Dante leaned back, regarding me thoughtfully. "Your manager at Bianchi's has been informed you're taking a leave of absence for a family emergency. Your roommate will be told the same. As for your apartment, you can keep it if you wish, but you won't be returning there until I'm certain it's safe." The methodical way he'd taken over every aspect of my existence should have infuriated me, but underneath the high-handedness was a stark reality. He was trying to keep me alive. "How long?" I asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted. "Days, possibly weeks. And I'm just supposed to stay here. A prisoner in a gilded cage." His expression hardened. "You're not a prisoner, Sophia. You're under my protection. There's a difference." "Really?" "Because it feels the same from where I'm sitting." He stood suddenly, moving around the desk to lean against it directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. In the sunlight, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, a surprising warmth in what I'd thought was pure obsidian. "You saved my life," he said, voice low and intense. "Do you understand what that means to a man like me? Not just gratitude, but obligation. Honor. In my world, there is nothing more sacred than a life debt." I swallowed hard, acutely aware of his proximity, of the subtle heat radiating from his body. "I didn't do it to put you in my debt." "Which only increases the obligation." His hand moved as if to touch my face, then dropped away. "I know this situation isn't what you would choose, but it's the reality we face. So, we can waste time fighting against it, or we can make the best of it." Before I could respond, a sharp knock interrupted us. The door opened to reveal one of the bodyguards from the previous night, his expression grim. "Sir, we have a situation with the mother." I was on my feet instantly. "What about my mother? Is she hurt?" Dante placed a steadying hand on my arm. "What happened, Antonio?" "She's refusing to leave her apartment. Says she won't go anywhere without speaking to Sophia first. And there's a complication. Her nurse is there asking questions. Fear clutched at my chest. Mom's daytime nurse, Lynette, was protective and suspicious by nature. If strange men showed up trying to move Mom to a new location, of course she'd resist. I need to speak to her, I said urgently. She'll panic if strange men try to force her to move. Dante nodded once. Get her on the phone, he instructed Antonio. Secure line. No location data. While the bodyguard made the call, Dante turned to me. Tell her only what she needs to know. That you're safe. That the move is temporary. That her medical needs will be met. I'm not going to lie to my mother. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to be selective with the truth. His eyes held mine. Do you want her worrying that her daughter is being hunted by killers? He had a point. Mom's condition was aggravated by stress. Learning that I'd stumbled into the middle of a mob war would definitely qualify as stressful. Antonio returned with a sleek black phone, holding it out to me. It's connecting now. I took a deep breath and accepted the device. Mom. Sophia. Her voice, familiar and worried, made my throat tighten. What's going on? There are men here saying I need to move immediately for my safety. Lynette is about to call the police. Mom, it's okay, I soothed, turning away from Dante's watchful gaze. There's been a situation, but I'm fine. These men are helping us. Helping how? Sophia, you're scaring me. Where are you? I closed my eyes, hating the fear in her voice. I'm safe. I promise. I did something last night. Something good. But it's complicated. These men work for someone who wants to thank me by making sure we're both taken care of for a while. A long pause. This sounds suspicious, Sophia. Very suspicious. I know it does. I tried to inject confidence I didn't feel into my voice. But I promise it's legitimate. They're moving you to a fully accessible apartment with all your equipment. Everything will be paid for, including a private nurse. It's just temporary until things settle down. What things? What did you do? I glanced back at Dante, who was watching me intently. I helped someone. Someone important. I can't say more right now, but I will explain everything when I see you. And when will that be? Soon, I promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. Please, Mom. Trust me. Let them help you move. Put Lynette on the phone. There was a rustling sound as she passed the phone. Lynette's suspicious voice came through clearly. Who are these people, Sophia? They look like trouble. They're security, I said, choosing my words carefully. Private security for a very wealthy client. I did him a favor and he's returning it by making sure Mom is comfortable and safe while I help with a project. A project? Lynette repeated skeptically. What kind of project requires armed guards? I closed my eyes. Of course, she'd noticed the weapons. It's complicated. Please, Lynette, just help Mom with the move. Everything's being handled professionally. I promise. After several more minutes of reassurances, Lynette reluctantly agreed. I spoke to Mom again, doing my best to sound confident and calm rather than terrified and confused. When I finally ended the call, my hands were shaking. You handled that well, Dante observed, taking the phone from my trembling fingers. I just lied to my mother. You protected her from unnecessary worry, he corrected. There's a difference. The echo of our earlier exchange wasn't lost on me. Protection versus imprisonment. Truth versus lies. The lines were blurring, and I wasn't sure where I stood anymore. Antonio returned to the study, this time accompanied by a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the bearing of someone used to giving orders. They spoke to Dante in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow, tension evident in their postures. Dante responded sharply, gesturing toward me once. The older man's eyes flicked in my direction, assessing before he nodded reluctantly and continued in English. The Russo woman complicates matters, he said as if I weren't standing right there. She's a liability. A weakness that can be exploited. She's under my protection, Dante replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. That's not negotiable, Salvatore. The man, Salvatore, pressed his lips together in obvious disagreement, but didn't push further. The Moretti faction is making noise about territorial encroachment. They're claiming the hit attempt was unrelated to our internal issues. Convenient, Dante said dryly. And false. Find me proof of who ordered it. Salvatore nodded, then hesitated. There's also the matter of the shipment arriving tonight. Security protocols need to be adjusted given the current situation. I didn't want to know what kind of shipment a crime family would be receiving. I looked away, studying the pattern of the carpet with sudden interest. We'll discuss that privately, Dante said, glancing at me. Sophia, would you give us a moment? Being dismissed like a child should have irritated me, but in truth, I was relieved. The less I knew about Dante Castelliano's criminal enterprises, the better. I was halfway to the door when Salvatore spoke again. One more thing. Lorenzo wants a meeting. Says he has information about who might have talked. The name meant nothing to me, but Dante's reaction was immediate. A subtle tensing of his shoulders, a hardening around his eyes. Lorenzo, he repeated, voice dangerously soft. Interesting timing. Should I arrange it? Yes. Here. Tonight. Dante's eyes found mine as I paused at the door. And Sophia will join us. What? I blurted, forgetting my intention to slip away quietly. Why would I be at a meeting about your business? Salvatore looked equally displeased. She's a civilian, Dante. This is family business. She's the reason I'm alive to conduct family business, Dante countered. And Lorenzo should see that. It will be educational for him. I didn't like the sound of that. Didn't like being used as some kind of object lesson in whatever power play was unfolding. But before I could protest further, Federico appeared at my elbow, somehow materializing exactly when needed. Miss Russo, if you'll come with me, he said smoothly. Josephine has prepared the garden room for your use this morning. With no graceful way to refuse, I followed Federico from the study, Dante's calculating gaze following me until the door closed behind us. The garden room turned out to be a sun-filled conservatory filled with plants and comfortable furnishings. A vaulted glass ceiling overlooked meticulously landscaped grounds, giving the illusion of being outdoors while remaining safely inside the secured perimeter. Mr. Castelliano thought you might appreciate a change of scenery, Federico explained, gesturing to a table where books, magazines, and a tablet had been arranged. There's also a selection of refreshments, and the Wi-Fi password is listed here. He indicated a small card. The thoughtfulness of the gesture was almost as unsettling as Dante's more obvious power plays. I settled onto a wicker chair, picking up one of the books. A recent bestseller I'd been wanting to read, but couldn't afford. How long have you worked for Mr. Castelliano? I asked Federico impulsively. The butler's expression remained professionally neutral. I served his father before him, and now I serve the son. So you know everything about the family business. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I know what I need to know to perform my duties, Miss Russo, as should we all. With that gentle warning, he left me alone in the sun-drenched room, surrounded by luxury and comfort that couldn't quite mask the danger beyond the glass. I tried to read but couldn't focus. Instead, I found myself drawn to the windows, watching the armed men who patrolled the grounds with military precision. The estate was a fortress, beautiful but deadly, much like its owner. Hours passed this way, with Josephine bringing lunch that I barely touched. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from Ellie or my mother, each one harder to answer than the last as my excuses grew thinner. In the late afternoon, as shadows lengthened across the lawn, I noticed increased activity at the main gate. More security personnel appeared, taking positions throughout the grounds. A sleek black Mercedes passed through the checkpoint, followed by two more identical vehicles. The meeting with Lorenzo was about to begin. Josephine arrived shortly thereafter, her normally calm demeanor slightly strained. Mr. Castelliano requests your presence in the main dining room in 30 minutes. I've prepared appropriate attire in your suite. The appropriate attire turned out to be a deep blue cocktail dress that fit like it had been tailored specifically for me, along with heels I'd never be able to afford on a waitress's salary. Makeup and jewelry had been laid out as well, subtle enhancements rather than dramatic transformation. I stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the woman who looked back. Gone was the exhausted server in a stained uniform. In her place stood someone who could plausibly belong in Dante Castellano's world. Elegant, composed, expensive. It was all surface, of course. Underneath, I was still the same, terrified, out of my depth, trapped in a situation spinning rapidly beyond my control. A knock at my door signaled it was time. One of Dante's security men, not Antonio, but another whose name I didn't know, had come to escort me downstairs. His expression was professionally blank as he led me through the mansion to a formal dining room I hadn't seen before. Dante was waiting at the bottom of the staircase, his gaze traveling over me with unmistakable appreciation. He wore a different suit than earlier, this one a deep charcoal that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. A blood-red tie provided the only splash of color. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "I look like someone else," I countered. "Someone who belongs in this house." Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction perhaps, or triumph. Perhaps that's not coincidence. Before I could decipher his meaning, he offered his arm. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in the crook of his elbow, feeling the solid muscle beneath the fine fabric. "What am I supposed to do in there?" I asked quietly as we approached the dining room. "What role am I playing?" "You're playing no role at all," he replied, his voice equally low. "You're simply being yourself. The woman who saved my life when she had every reason not to. And why does that matter to Lorenzo?" Dante paused, turning to face me fully. His expression was more serious than I'd seen it yet, something almost vulnerable in his gaze. "Because Lorenzo is my half-brother," he said quietly. "And I need to know whether he tried to have me killed." The dining room fell silent as we entered, all eyes turning to assess us, or more accurately, to assess me. 8 men in expensive suits sat around a massive mahogany table, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. At the far end, directly opposite Dante's empty chair, sat a man who could only be Lorenzo, younger than Dante by perhaps a decade, with the same dark coloring but sharper features, like a sketch of Dante drawn with harder lines and less subtlety. Dante's hand pressed against the small of my back, guiding me toward the empty chair to his right. I moved as gracefully as possible in the unfamiliar heels, feeling Lorenzo's gaze follow me with calculated interest. "Gentlemen," Dante said, his voice carrying effortlessly in the hushed room. "This is Sofia Russo." No explanation, no context. Just my name presented as if it should mean something to these dangerous men. "The waitress," Lorenzo filled in. A slight smirk playing at his lips. "Your savior." The way he said it, dripping with innuendo, made my skin crawl. Dante's expression remained neutral, but I felt the subtle tension in his body as he took his seat. "Yes," he replied simply. "The woman who prevented my assassination when it would have been far easier to look the other way." An uncomfortable silence settled over the table, broken only by the arrival of Federico and 2 staff members bearing trays of appetizers and wine. The food was exquisite, delicate portions of seafood and vegetables arranged like artwork, but I could barely manage more than a few bites. My stomach knotted with anxiety. The men discussed business matters in terms vague enough to be meaningless to outsiders, shipping schedules, distribution channels, personnel changes, while I picked at my food and tried to appear both attentive and uninterested, the perfect accessory, neither threatening nor completely oblivious. Throughout the meal, I felt Lorenzo watching me, assessing. Whenever I looked up, his eyes would slide away, but the weight of his attention remained. Dante noticed too, his hand occasionally finding my knee beneath the table in what might have been reassurance or possession. I wasn't sure which. As the main course was cleared, Dante finally addressed the real purpose of the meeting. "Tell me about this information you have, Lorenzo. Who talked about my dinner plans at Bianchi's?" Lorenzo dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin, setting it aside with deliberate care. "One of the kitchen staff," he said smoothly. "A dishwasher named Miguel. Been working there 3 months. Apparently, he overheard the reservation confirmation and passed it along for a few hundred. And how did you come by this information?" Dante's tone was conversational, but I could sense the trap being laid. Lorenzo shrugged. "I have connections in that neighborhood. People talk to me. He glanced at me with a thin smile. Especially service workers. They see everything but are treated like they're invisible. I kept my expression neutral, though the implication was clear. I was just another service worker who'd seen something and should have remained invisible. Interesting, Dante said, swirling his wine thoughtfully. And Miguel is where now? Unfortunately, he seems to have left town quite suddenly. But I'm sure he can be found if necessary. Salvatore, seated halfway down the table, made a soft noise of disbelief. Convenient timing. Lorenzo's smile tightened. What are you suggesting, old man? I suggest nothing, Salvatore replied mildly. I merely observe. Tension crackled in the air like static electricity. I glanced at Dante, finding his expression unreadable as he studied his half-brother with the focus of a chess master contemplating his opponent's move. Sophia, Dante said suddenly, his gaze still on Lorenzo. Tell my brother about the men you saw at Bianchi's that night. All eyes turned to me. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. 4 men in business suits, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I cleared my throat and continued more firmly. They were seated after Mr. Castellano arrived. They ordered quickly but didn't eat. They seemed to be watching your table. Did you recognize any of them? Dante prompted. I shook my head. No, but they seemed nervous. One kept checking his watch. They left immediately after I hesitated, not wanting to mention the poisoned drink directly. After you saved my life, Dante finished for me. Lorenzo's expression had grown increasingly strained. And this is relevant how? Street thugs hired for a job always get nervous. Street thugs, Dante repeated thoughtfully. Interesting that you know what type of men they were, since Sophia never described their appearance or manner. Only their actions. A dangerous silence fell over the table. Lorenzo's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching visibly. You're reaching, brother, he said finally. I made a logical assumption. Did you? Dante's voice remained pleasant, but his eyes had hardened to obsidian. Sophia, the men who pursued us from the restaurant, would you say they were street thugs? I thought about the coordinated precision of the attack, the professional way they'd maneuvered in traffic. No, I answered truthfully. They seemed trained. Organized. Lorenzo's hand tightened around his wine glass. Are you actually taking the word of a waitress over your own blood? Blood? Dante repeated, something dangerous flickering in his expression. Yes. Let's talk about blood, Lorenzo. About loyalty. About family. One of the other men, younger than most, with a thin scar along his jawline, shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps this conversation should be private. No, Dante said sharply. I want witnesses. I want everyone to see the truth. He leaned forward, his gaze never leaving Lorenzo's face. Where were you on Tuesday between 2 and 4 p.m.? The seemingly random question caught everyone by surprise, including me. Lorenzo blinked, momentarily thrown. What? I was at the club. Meeting with the Reikai representatives. You know this. I do know this, Dante agreed. Because I had you followed. He reached into his jacket and withdrew his phone, tapping the screen before sliding it toward the center of the table. A video began to play, showing Lorenzo in what appeared to be a private room at an upscale club, engaged in heated conversation with 2 older men. The Reikai brothers, Dante narrated unnecessarily. Our competitors. The same men who would benefit most directly from a change in Castellano leadership. Lorenzo's face had gone pale beneath his tan. Business discussions. Nothing more. Turn up the volume, brother, Dante suggested softly. When Lorenzo didn't move, Salvatore reached for the phone, increasing the volume. Lorenzo's voice emerged clearly from the device. After tomorrow night, once it's done, the old agreements are void. We negotiate fresh terms. The video ended, leaving a damning silence in its wake. Lorenzo's eyes darted around the table, finding no allies in the hard faces of his father's men. You've misunderstood, he began, desperation edging into his voice. I was referring to stop. Dante's command cut through the room like a blade. You've betrayed this family. You've betrayed me, and you've failed. Lorenzo's expression twisted from fear to something uglier. Resentment, hatred, jealousy. You were never supposed to run this family, he spat. Father's precious heir, his legitimate son. While you plotted from the shadows, Dante finished, undermining everything our father built, everything I've worked to legitimize. Legitimize? Lorenzo laughed bitterly. You're gutting our operations, turning us into corporate drones. This isn't what we are. It's what we will be, Dante countered, his voice low but carrying easily in the tense silence. A legitimate enterprise with legitimate power. No more blood in the streets. No more territory wars. And my blood? Lorenzo asked, a sneer twisting his handsome features. Is that to be spilled for your new vision? The question hung in the air, charged with deadly significance. I glanced at Dante, seeing something painful cross his features. Regret perhaps, or mourning for what might have been. You tried to kill me, Dante said softly. What do you think? Lorenzo's hand moved suddenly, reaching inside his jacket. Before I could process what was happening, two of Dante's men had drawn weapons, training them on Lorenzo with deadly focus. I wouldn't, Salvatore advised, his own hand hovering near what I assumed was a concealed gun. Lorenzo froze, then slowly withdrew his hand, empty. A brittle smile crossed his face. So, this is it. An execution at the dinner table? No, Dante said, surprising everyone. Not here. Not now. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with calm precision that belied the violence humming in the air. Take him to the boathouse. We'll finish this privately. Two men moved immediately to Lorenzo's sides, gripping his arms firmly as they pulled him to his feet. His gaze locked on me with such naked hatred that I flinched back. This is because of her, he hissed. Your waitress. Your weakness. Dante's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. No, brother. This is because of you. Your greed. Your betrayal. He nodded to the men. Take him. As Lorenzo was led away, his final glare burned into me, a promise of vengeance that chilled me to the bone. The remaining men at the table sat in uncomfortable silence, none meeting my eyes. Dante turned to me, his expression softening marginally. You should rest. Federico will escort you to your room. It was a dismissal, gentle but firm. I wanted to protest, to demand answers about what would happen next, but the dining room suddenly felt suffocating. I stood on legs that threatened to buckle, nodding numbly. Gentlemen, I managed, the politeness absurd in the context of what I'd just witnessed. Federico appeared silently at my elbow, guiding me from the room. As we reached the doorway, Dante's voice stopped us. Sophia. I turned back, finding his gaze intent upon me. Thank you, he said simply. For your honesty. I nodded once, unable to form words, and let Federico lead me upstairs to my suite. Once alone, I kicked off the uncomfortable heels and paced the plush carpet, hugging myself as tremors began to rack my body. I'd just participated in what amounted to a mob tribunal. A man, Dante's own brother, was being taken to a boathouse to be what? Interrogated? Executed? I didn't want to know, but the possibilities played in vivid detail behind my closed eyelids. An hour passed in this state of agitated distress. I changed from the elegant dress back into the comfortable clothes Josephine had provided earlier, but nothing could ease the tension knotted between my shoulder blades. A soft knock at the door made me jump. Yes. I called, my voice breaking slightly. Dante entered without waiting for further permission. He'd removed his tie and jacket, and several buttons of his shirt were undone, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. He carried 2 glasses of amber liquid, extending one to me. Drink, he said simply. You need it. I accepted the glass automatically, taking a sip that burned down my throat. Is he dead? The question emerged before I could stop it. Dante's eyes met mine, unflinching. No. But he will be. Removed from the family? It wasn't a question. He took a long swallow from his own glass before answering. Lorenzo has been removed from the family. He'll live out his days far from here, under guard, with no contact with anyone from his former life. It was more merciful than I'd expected, though still a death sentence of sorts. Because he's your brother. Half-brother, Dante corrected automatically, then sighed. But yes. Blood still counts for something, even tainted blood. I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. What happens now? Dante studied me for a long moment. Now the real work begins. Finding everyone connected to the plot, securing our position, ensuring no one else gets ideas about removing me from power. And me. What happens to me? He moved closer, setting his glass aside to crouch before me, bringing us to eye level. You remain under my protection, Sophia. That hasn't changed. For how long? I whispered. His hand rose to cup my cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle from someone I just watched condemn his own brother to exile. As long as necessary. I should have pulled away, should have maintained some distance, some barrier between myself and this dangerous man who dealt in life and death with such casual authority. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, craving comfort even from the source of my fear. I never wanted this, I said, my voice barely audible. Any of it. I know. His thumb traced my cheekbone with unexpected tenderness. But here we are. Here we were indeed. A waitress and a mafia boss, bound by violence and protection, by debt and gratitude. By something else I wasn't ready to name, growing between us like a hothouse flower, beautiful and potentially toxic. Days blended into each other within the sheltered confines of Dante's estate. I spoke to my mother daily on secure lines, reassuring her that I was fine, that her new accommodations were temporary, that everything would return to normal soon. The lies became easier with repetition, though the guilt never diminished. A week after Lorenzo's removal, Dante informed me that it was safe for me to visit my mother. The anticipation of leaving the estate, even briefly, filled me with both excitement and anxiety. I'd grown accustomed to the predictable rhythms of life behind Dante's walls. Breakfast in the garden room. Walks around the manicured grounds with armed guards discreetly shadowing me. Dinners with Dante when his business allowed. There are rules, he told me as we stood in his study, his security team reviewing the route one final time. You don't go alone. You stay with Antonio and Marco at all times. You return here before dark. I nodded, too grateful for the opportunity to argue with his conditions. Thank you for arranging this. His expression softened slightly. Your mother needs to see you, and you need to see her. The drive to my mother's new apartment took place in an armored SUV with tinted windows, Antonio beside the driver, and Marco next to me in the back seat. The city looked both familiar and strange after my seclusion. The same buildings and streets, but viewed through a lens of heightened awareness. Every pedestrian, every passing car became a potential threat in my newly paranoid mindset. Mom's new accommodations were stunning. A corner unit in a luxury building with wide doorways for her wheelchair, custom-height countertops, and state-of-the-art medical equipment that made her previous setup look primitive. Her private nurse, a competent woman named Valerie who'd replaced Lynette, discreetly withdrew when I arrived, giving us privacy while Antonio and Marco took positions outside the door. Sophia, Mom breathed, opening her arms to me. I fell into them, breathing in her familiar scent, lotion and the lavender sachets she kept in her drawers. Let me look at you. She held me at arm's length, her keen eyes taking in details I'd thought I'd concealed, the shadows under my eyes despite carefully applied makeup, the tension I carried in my shoulders. You've lost weight, she observed. And you're not sleeping. I attempted a smile. I'm fine. Just adjusting to everything. Which is what exactly? She gestured around the luxurious apartment. You still haven't explained any of this. Who is this man who suddenly decided to be our benefactor? What did you do for him? I perched on the ottoman near her wheelchair, choosing my words carefully. I noticed something wrong at the restaurant. Something that could have hurt him. I warned him and he's grateful. Grateful enough to provide all this. Her skepticism was evident. Sophia, I raised you to recognize when something seems too good to be true. It's complicated, Mom. You uncomplicate it for me. Her tone held the no-nonsense authority that had guided me through childhood and adolescence. I sighed, offering a version of the truth with the sharpest edges filed down. He's a businessman. Powerful. Someone tried to harm him at the restaurant. I noticed and stopped it. Now those people might want to harm me, too. As retaliation. He's protecting both of us until it's safe. Mom's eyes widened. Harm him how? Are you in danger? Not anymore, I assured her, taking her hands in mine. His security is the best. No one can touch us. She squeezed my fingers, her grip still strong despite her illness. This businessman, what's his name? I hesitated, but there was no point hiding it. She could easily look up the building's owner. Dante Castellano. Her face paled, confirming my suspicion that she recognized the name. The Castellanos. Sophia, there, I know what they are, I interrupted gently. Or what they've been. He's changing things, moving the business in legitimate directions. You're defending him. It wasn't a question, but an observation tinged with worry. I'm just stating facts. Mom studied me with the penetrating gaze that had always seen through my childhood fibs. You're involved with him, aren't you? Not just as someone under his protection. No, I protested, though the denial felt hollow. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I struggled to define the complex relationship that had developed between Dante and me. He was my protector, yes, but also my captor in a sense, my savior and the source of my danger. In the weeks since Lorenzo's exile, something had shifted between us. Lingering glances, conversations that stretched late into the evening, a growing comfort in each other's presence that couldn't be explained by mere circumstances. I don't know, I admitted finally. But I'm safe. And so are you. Mom didn't look convinced, but she changed the subject, updating me on her therapy progress and the books she'd been reading. We spent the afternoon in the familiar comfort of each other's company, carefully navigating around the dangerous truths neither of us was ready to fully acknowledge. When Antonio signaled it was time to leave, Mom held me tightly, whispering fiercely in my ear, "Remember who you are, Sophia. Don't lose yourself in his world." The warning echoed in my mind during the drive back to the estate, through the security checkpoint, and into the grand foyer where Dante waited, his expression revealing nothing about how he'd spent the hours of my absence. "How is she?" he asked as the guards discreetly withdrew. "Adjusting," I replied. "Suspicious. Worried about me." A slight smile touched his lips. "A mother's prerogative. She knows who you are. What the Castellano name means. Most people in this city do." He gestured toward the study. "Join me for a drink." I followed him into the now familiar room, accepting the glass of wine he poured me. Over the past week, we'd fallen into a routine of evening conversations here. Dante at his ease in one of the leather armchairs. Me usually on the couch, maintaining a safe physical distance, while our minds drew closer through dialogue. Tonight, however, something felt different. Tension hummed in the air between us, amplified by my visit to my mother and her parting warning. "You've been patient," Dante observed, studying me over the rim of his glass. "Confined here, separated from your life. Most people would be demanding answers, timelines, guarantees by now." I shrugged. Would demands change anything? No, he admitted. But most would make them anyway. I'm not most people. His eyes darkened. "No, you're not." Something in his tone made my pulse quicken. I took a sip of wine to hide my reaction. "How much longer?" I asked finally. "Until it's safe." Dante set his glass aside, his expression turning serious. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. Lorenzo's co-conspirators have been dealt with. But there will always be threats in my world, Sophia. Always someone who wants what I have, what I've built. So never," I translated. "It will never be completely safe." He rose from his chair, moving to sit beside me on the couch, closer than our usual careful distance. "Not never. But not yet." I should have moved away, maintained the boundary we'd tacitly established. Instead, I found myself turning toward him, drawn by the magnetic pull he'd always exerted on me, even when I'd been avoiding him at the restaurant. "I can't stay here forever," I said softly. "This isn't my life. This isn't me." His hand came up to cup my cheek, just as it had the night of Lorenzo's betrayal. "Isn't it? You've adapted to this world with remarkable ease. You navigate dangerous men and complex situations with natural grace. You've shown loyalty, discretion, courage. That doesn't make me belong here, doesn't it? His thumb traced my lower lip, sending shivers through me. You saved my life, Sophia. You tied your fate to mine in that moment. Perhaps there's a reason beyond coincidence. I wanted to reject the suggestion of destiny, of some cosmic purpose in our meeting. But sitting here with the warmth of his hand against my skin and the intensity of his gaze holding mine, it was difficult to dismiss the sense that we had been moving toward this moment all along. What are you suggesting? I whispered. Stay, he said simply. Not as someone under my protection, not as a guest. As my partner. The word hung in the air between us, laden with meaning beyond its simple syllables. Partner. In what sense? Business? Life? Something in between? I don't know anything about your business, I hedged. A small smile played at his lips. I'm not asking you to run my empire, Sophia. I'm asking you to be with me. The rest we can figure out together. Be with you, I repeated slowly. As what exactly? In answer, he leaned forward, pausing with his lips a breath away from mine, giving me time to pull away, to say no. When I remained still, neither advancing nor retreating, he closed the distance. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but quickly deepened as something broke loose inside me. Weeks of tension, fear, and unacknowledged attraction culminated in this moment. My hands clutched the fine fabric of his shirt as his arms encircled me, drawing me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality came crashing back. I pressed my forehead against his chest, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. This is insane, I murmured. A month ago, I was hiding from you at the restaurant. Now you want me to what? Be your girlfriend? Your wife? His fingers threaded through my hair, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. I want you to be mine in whatever way feels right to you. The form is less important than the substance. And if I say no? If I want to go back to my old life? A shadow crossed his face. Then I would ensure your safety as best I could, set you up somewhere new, far from here, with enough money that you and your mother would never want for anything. His voice roughened. And I would regret losing you every day for the rest of my life. The naked honesty in his words struck me more powerfully than any practiced seduction could have. This dangerous man, accustomed to power and control, was offering me a genuine choice and showing me his own vulnerability in the process. I need time, I said finally. To think. To be sure. He nodded, releasing me reluctantly. Take all the time you need. But know this, Sophia. I protect what's mine. Always. And from the moment you saved my life, you became mine in a way that transcends ownership or possession. You became essential. The word resonated through me. Essential. Not a possession or a trophy or a temporary fascination. Something necessary, integral, vital. I stood shakily, needing distance to clear my head. Good night, Dante. His eyes followed me to the door. Good night, Sophia. Sleep eluded me that night as I paced the blue suite, weighing impossible choices. Return to my former life, always looking over my shoulder, wondering if Dante's enemies had found me, or step fully into his world, with all its danger and moral ambiguity, but also its protection, its luxury, its power. And underneath those practical considerations lay the more troubling question. What did I feel for Dante Castellano? Was it Stockholm Syndrome, mere proximity and dependence creating the illusion of deeper emotion? Or was there something real between us? Something that might have grown even without the dramatic circumstances of our connection. Dawn was breaking when clarity finally came. I showered and dressed with deliberate care, choosing clothes from the wardrobe that now felt less like a costume and more like a second skin. When I descended to the dining room, Dante was already there, drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet. He looked up as I entered, his expression carefully neutral despite the question in his eyes. I took the seat beside him rather than across the table, a small but significant choice. I've made my decision. He set down his tablet, giving me his full attention. I want to go back to Bianchi's, I said, watching his face fall slightly before I continued. To collect my final paycheck and formally resign. Understanding dawned in his eyes, quickly replaced by something warmer. And then I want to learn about your business. Your world. The legitimate parts first, I clarified. I can't promise I'll ever be comfortable with the other aspects. The other aspects are diminishing by the day, he said. That was always my plan, to transition the Castellano Empire into something that can stand in the light. With me by your side. He took my hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and perfectly suited to him. With you as my partner. My conscience. My balance. The world I was choosing wasn't safe or simple. There would be dangers, compromises, difficult decisions ahead. But looking into Dante's eyes, I saw something worth the risk. A future being forged from a complicated past. A man evolving beyond the legacy he'd inherited. A chance to be not just protected, but essential. Partners, I agreed, turning my hand to intertwine my fingers with his. As the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating us in its golden light, I thought of the cloudy swirl in a glass of scotch that had altered the course of my life. One small observation, one moment of decision had led me here, to Dante Castellano's side, to a new beginning neither of us could have anticipated. I had saved his life, and in return, he had given me a new one.